Tax season can be a challenging time of year, and doing taxes with my husband for the first time was a very interesting experience. So I am here to share with you my recollections on everything we went through, everything I went through, and all the things that I learned doing taxes with my husband for the first time. So here's a little bit about our situation. We got married in 2022, February of 2022. So this was the first year that we were filing taxes together. For some background, I've spoken about how my income is very low relative to the area that we live in and my financial obligations. His income is higher than mine. He also has very high financial obligations, and he also has other kind of complex tax situations. So I can't speak to all of his situation, but it is much more complicated than mine. His income is also much greater than mine. So that's our situation kind of in a nutshell. He is very savvy with finances. He knows the right questions to ask, and he's very thorough all around. So in that, I'm very happy to be exposed to him. He knows, again, the questions to ask, and that's very useful. So that is our situation. Here's what we could have done as far as taxes go. And we even talked about this last April when we were married, but still filing separately because we were not married in 2021. So we both we thought at that point that we would just file married filing separately. That's what we thought. We agreed that we would do. That's what we could have done. Then I got pregnant and we have our first child together, and things changed a little bit. Up until, I want to say 3 weeks ago, up until I ran the numbers, we still thought that we would file married filing separately. That way we would each be responsible for our own returns. Because when you file married filing jointly, you are responsible for the other person's return and vice versa. So again, because my return is fairly straightforward and relatively uncomplicated, it would have been it's a fairly simple, straightforward process for me. Because his is very complex, it's a little bit more detailed. And I understand that he wanted to be responsible for himself, and I wanted to be responsible for myself. However, this is what we ultimately chose to do because we were sharing the deduction of the child together. We decided to file married filing jointly, and I learned some pretty important things as far as filing taxes together with him, as far as the deductions that we could claim and why it ultimately ended up being more favorable to file jointly, but we didn't think it would be in the beginning. So back up to married filing separately. Because his income is higher and mine is lower, adding my income on top of his income would have been a penalty as far as just the straight numbers go. However, because A, we have the child, and B, he was able to claim other deductions that I wasn't using. He was able to take advantage of those. It was almost like he was getting a double deduction because of that. So that was one thing. You can share the deductions. The other reason we decided to file together is because of the Roth IRA. Now, this is an important thing that I learned about the Roth IRA when you are married filing separately, is that your income limit to contribute to your Roth IRA is $10,000. So if you make $10,001, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA. If you do, it will be penalized at 6%. So that was complete news to me. I did not know that that was the case as far as the income limits for married filing separately. No one ever speaks about that, which is kind of the motivation for me wanting to make this specific video, to say, hey, if you're thinking about married filing separately, you can't contribute to your IRA, FYI. I know because of income limits too, he thought he wasn't eligible for IRA contributions in general, but he was able to, through deductions, get his income down to a limit where he can contribute and we can contribute together. So that is another reason why we decided to go with married filing jointly. So here's something else I did not know about married filing separately, is if one spouse itemizes, then both spouses must itemize, which is annoying for me because I just took the standard deduction, and the standard deduction would have ultimately ended up being higher for me. So that's what we ultimately decided to do, is to do married filing jointly, and that is what we did. This was a long process, pardon me. It was a long process. from start to finish. We use TurboTax, and it has that little like race calculator to see how fast you can get your taxes done. Like, we gave up after hour 8. It took me about an hour and a half to put all my details in, and I was ready to hit send, and he was like, you know what, let me calculate it both ways. He did not think it would work out to our benefit to file together, but ultimately we did. And I am very happy that I was able to kind of get him on my side about contributing to the Roth IRA. I'm like, rich people build in loopholes to be able to contribute to their IRAs. It's worth it to contribute. So we ultimately, that's probably one of the thing that I'm most happy about, is that we are both contributing to the IRA, to our respective IRAs, which is fantastic. But again, I did not know that there was that income limit if you are married filing separately. So heads up. I don't know if anyone watching this is. Let me know. Leave me a comment down below if you are in that position, if you're considering married filing separately and the IRA contribution limit may affect you. So that's something that I learned. Also, I did not know, it's just a whole new experience for me. So that's what we ultimately decided to do as far as filing goals. And ultimately, in the wrap up, what I learned. So I learned a couple of different things as far as this goes. Taxes, etc. I am, again, ultimately glad that we are filing jointly. That was my initial inclination. That's what I wanted to do, is married filing jointly, because I'm thinking we're married. We should be united like that. However, just because we filed jointly this year, if next year it works out better for us to file separately, we can file separately. That's totally okay. You can go back and forth and there's no problem whatsoever. So that's something else that I learned. Ultimately, overall, my 3 takeaways that I learned about taxes, and these are more on a personal level. These are just lessons that I keep relearning personally. Ultimately, the only person I can control is myself. And that is certainly the most freeing and empowering statement that I can make. I just have a different view and attitude toward money. I mean, again, I'm the one that's making the lower income. He's the one that's making the higher income, and he's very relaxed as far as his attitude. He's a very easygoing, kind of relaxed guy in general. I am more of the, I want to get it done. I want to get it filed. I want to have my ducks in order. But again, because he's got more to be responsible for, he's been able to generate more income. I think that adopting maybe some of his, I would say his money-making attitude, but that would be certainly something that I can do. But ultimately, I can only control myself. I can't control anyone else. And I want to harvest acceptance and love. I want to generate and create acceptance and love in my relationship rather than resentment. So I just focus on accepting and loving myself and also my spouse. So that's ultimately thing number 1 that I learned. I can only control myself. Second thing was to not be afraid to ask questions, which generally I'm not. I'm working to make sure that my questions are very targeted and specific. I have a habit of kind of trailing off when I ask a question and not finishing the question, because I'm either uncertain of where the question should go, or I'm uncertain of the value of the question, which leads me into item 3, which is trust your gut question. So sometimes I would question things on a form or on a page, because what we did was we sat together and stepped through the entire our entire filing, which was very tedious but good for both of us, because we were both able to be sort of a second set of eyes. So listening to gut sort of leanings or gut intuition, call it, was also very helpful, because sometimes I'd just be like, well, why isn't that number the same, or why is this number different than that number? And on the surface it may be like, well, that's just what it is, but like digging a little bit deeper, you're like, oh, but if you claim this, or if you file it this way, or if you list these 2 items together, you can actually harvest it. Again, greater deductions, greater savings. That actually was a big item, because I said, well, why aren't these 2 deduction numbers the same? And why aren't these 2 numbers the same? And he ended up being able to take tax breaks from 2 different counties, because we live in Manhattan. We get both New York City and the state of New York, because we're paying taxes both to New York City and to the state of New York. But so that's a separate item entirely. But I feel like the gut questions, sometimes what you think might be a stupid question isn't a stupid question after all. At least that's what happened in my experience. So overall, it was a very interesting and instructive time. It was very challenging, but ultimately I feel better having filed and gone through that process together. I feel like it made our relationship stronger. Also, don't be afraid to question in general. I just emphasize that in general because Google everything heavily. Google heavily. Everyone's situation is different. You may, if you ask this question, you're not sure, just keep Googling. I actually didn't, again, about the IRA contribution limits, I didn't know about that, married filing separately. There was no reason why I would know about that, but I feel like nobody talks about it. So that's, again, why I want to mention it. I can't mention that more often and strongly enough. Anyway, that is my wrap up for my first time filing taxes married with my husband. And here's what I learned. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you learned. If you filed taxes with a spouse, let me know what you learned. Let me know if anything surprised you. How was your tax filing experience this year? I'd love to know. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope you'll keep watching. Bye.